or her killing me. Good morning. And church, you ever ask yourself this question? I have wondered this myself so many times in life that I can't even begin to tell you how many times it's been something that I thought about. You ever wonder why you do the things that you do? Do you? So it's easy for me to say in my drug life and in this life and in that life and those things and before Christ, yes, I definitely wondered why I did all of those things. But what about after I walked down the aisle? What about after I came to know Jesus? What about after those things? I don't understand. Sometimes I still make those same stupid decisions. Sometimes I still struggle. Sometimes I still have sin in my life. And I don't understand, I thought by grace I was saved. And that one day I walked into church with nice clothes and nice things, and all of a sudden I was sinless like everybody else in the church. So it's confusing. It's confusing, is it not? And sometimes I think as a church, or as church, that sometimes we may misrepresent. Does that make sense? Right? That people from outside in the world walk in the church and they don't expect to see people who have lives that exist in sin, that still make mistakes, that still do things wrong. And then when people from the outside of the church, they walk into the church and they see us acting one way in church, or acting as if we are above these things that go wrong, and then on Saturday night they see us leaving the bar with someone who's not our wife, or whatever the case might be. And then at church Sunday, they think, hey, I don't want to be in that place. Because this person looks this way and acts this way, but they ain't that way. And sometimes I think that here, we feel like that we need to put on these different clothes. That we need to put on this different act. Like the person sitting next to you doesn't know that you just did something horribly wrong and stupid. And so I think that a lot of times that people outside of church, they see that and they think that maybe that's the way we think. Which in the end, I think that sometimes we've been raised to make us feel like that's how we should make people think, right? Is that, well, I came to know Jesus, and now I don't have any issues anymore. Well, I've asked myself many times after coming to know Jesus, why do I do the things I do? Why do I say the things that I say? And why do I act the way I act? But there's hope. So here's what I want to tell you today. If you feel that way, I know nobody in here does, that you've all surpassed and come into a spiritual maturity above and beyond the rest. But I haven't made it to where you are, though. I haven't reached on that plateau. So I'm chasing after all of you. But here's what, if you do feel that way, right? And don't let anybody else know in the church that you feel that way. But if you do, you're not alone. I want to tell you this morning, you're not alone. If we'll look in Romans, our main message this morning is going to be from Ephesians 2:1. But let's get cranked up here by looking at Romans 7:15 through 24. Now, I want to tell you this morning, Paul wrote this. Okay, so he's writing to the church in the congregation of the church of Rome. So Romans 7:15 through 24. And understand, as you read this with me, as we read this together, I want you to know something. Paul is a disciple, right? He wrote a lot of books in the New Testament. He wrote a lot of stuff about Jesus. He's got pretty good knowledge of what's going on, right? Most of the New Testament Paul wrote. And so he's a disciple who walked and talked with Jesus during his ministry. So let's keep that in our minds, okay? Romans 7:15-24. For I do not understand my own actions, for I do not know what I want, but I do everything I hate. And now, if I do what I do not want, I agree with the law that is good. So now it's no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is, in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but the sin that dwells within me. So I find it to be a law that is when I do, So I find it to be a law that is when I do, I may have to have one of y'all read this. So I find it to be a law that is when I want to do right. Evil lies close at hand, for I delight in the law of God in my inner being, but I see in my members another law waging war against the law of my mind, and making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this death? Man, that's a pretty poignant statement on Paul's part, right? Paul is a disciple that he touched Jesus. He touched him. He stood by the man's side. He had intimate conversations with him. He loved him. He saw him raised from the grave. This is Paul. This is Paul. It's not some just dude off the street that walked into a church. He says, man, I know what I need to do. I know what I'm supposed to do. But every time I try to do what I'm supposed to do, I have this thing living inside of me that makes me not do what I know is right. And even knowing that isn't enough to make it stop, because I still struggle with it every day. And I think that we have to understand, and we have to see, and we have to know in our hearts that Paul struggled. He struggled. He wasn't perfect. He didn't get everything right all the time. He had problems, just like everybody else. Well, let's turn over to Ephesians 2:1. Now, if you're wondering why, if you're wondering how does Paul still struggle with these things? Having all the experiences with God that he's had, having all the experiences with Jesus that he's had, having this relationship with him, having seen him raised from the grave. And then if I can possibly understand how it happens with Paul, that maybe I can begin to understand who I am and why it happens with me. So let's look at Ephesians 2:1 and look what it says. And you were dead. And you were dead in the trespasses and sins. And you were dead in the trespasses and sins. So I want you to understand this. It doesn't say you were born one day, you were brought into the world by your mother and your father, and then all of a sudden you grew up and became dead in your trespasses and sins. It says you were dead. Right? And so I want you to understand something. You were dead from the time that you were conceived. You were dead before, when you were just an embryo, a thought in your mother's womb. you were dead to trespasses and sins. We don't understand that. Like, how could that possibly be? Well, have you ever seen one of these babies? Y'all ever been around a baby very much? Oh my gosh. They're like little raptors. I mean, babies are cute and wonderful and awesome, and they're so soft and cuddly when they're little and in your hands and they're sleeping. It's like our dog. We love our dog to death when she's asleep. When she's awake, she is a complete and total terror. I mean, she's running around the ceiling, going crazy. But man, when she sleeps, she's so cute. We just love her. Right? When your baby's awake, oh my gosh. They're so demanding. They want all of your time, everything from you, right? Not only that, but if you take your eyes off that child, tell me that it has its best interests at heart. Tell me that that baby doesn't have sin in its heart. Right? You can take a baby when it learns to crawl, put it on the ground, turn your back for 1 second, and it'll have a gallon of bleach in its hand. It will. Never fails. It'll be sticking a fork into a light socket. I mean, they're little demons in diapers. They are. Kids are nuts, and if you're not there watching over them 24/7, if you turn your back, if you were to leave your baby at home by itself, most likely you would come home and it would be dead. They lack the ability to do what's right. And it shows up from the very time that you're born. Right? It does. It doesn't get any better when we get older. That's the really crazy thing. It doesn't get any better as we get older. In fact, it gets worse. It gets worse. You know, if you catch a baby putting a fork in a light socket, just as I saw it said, it can get shocked. It'll be sitting there smoking, hair out its hair. You grab it away and pull it away and take the fork away, stick it in the trash can. Not the baby, the fork. The next day you could come in, and like I said, it being in the cleaning cabinet, doing something crazy. That's just what kids do, right? They will do everything back for them. The problem is they have a curiosity for the things of the world. And here's what I want you to understand. You don't have to teach a baby to be stingy. You don't have to teach a child to be selfish. You have to teach them to share. You have to teach them to be caring. You have to teach them to be loving. You have to teach them that you can't drink a gallon of bleach. You have to teach them that you can't stick a fork in a light socket. Why? Because they just don't know. Well, that's confusing, isn't it? But guess what? The curiosity for things to do that are bad for them doesn't happen just when they're a baby. No, it continues on into adolescence. Or even adulthood. We continue to do things, even after we've learned the lesson of the light socket. Even after we may have gone to the emergency room for drinking the gallon of bleach, right? You still get older, you live through those things. Hey, you live and you learn, whatever. Hey, I can't tell you how many times that Kim or other people have told me, don't climb that ladder at the back of the church without somebody holding it. Yet I keep going up it and keep coming down it. Right? Haven't learned my lesson yet, but if I continue to do it, sooner or later I will. You know, but it's not enough to stop me. Not enough to stop me. Jim learned that yesterday, running from a wasp. He was up about 9 rungs on a ladder and found out that first step's a Lulu. It happens. The thing is, as we grow older, we have a tendency to speed, drink, and drive. You know, I can't tell you how many times I got into a car drunk. Way more smashed, and I shouldn't have got into a car drinking at all. I knew that before I started drinking, and before I was the only one that took myself to the bar, and knowing for a fact I was going to have to take myself home. Right? Thank God I never had an accident or got a DWI, but it's not like I don't know. It's not like you haven't read what's the news, but we all think to ourselves, what happened to me? Drugs, alcohol, all of these things, they're of the world, and we're very attracted to them. But like a baby who drinks bleach, all of those things are just bad for us. They're bad for us. And they'll hurt us in the end. They'll cause problems in the end. Yet we still have this crazy attraction to all of the bad things. All the bad things. Let's turn to Romans 5, 12 through 14. Let's look at Romans 5, 12 through 14. See what Paul has to say there. Romans 5, 12 through 14. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men, because all sinned. For sin indeed was in the world before the law was given, but sin is not counted where there is no law. Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those whose sinning was not like the transgressions of Adam, who was a type of the one who was to come. So understand this. What's that say? Well, first off, I want to tell you that sin is your nature. It's your nature. And that you didn't do anything inherently to make sin your nature. You inherited it. It's your birthright. Why? Because you're a human. Because you're in the line of the first Adam. Sin is your nature. So if you're asking yourself this question this morning, why do I continue to do the things I do? Because it's who you are. It's who you are. Let's go back to Ephesians. And we're going to talk about last week for just a second. What we talked about last week in last week's message. Oh, go back. Go back. There we go. Now, remember last week we talked about that Paul in Ephesians 1:18 was making a prayer for the church. Right? And this is what he said. He's saying, my prayer is to have the eyes of your the eyes of your heart enlightened, so that you may know what is the hope to which he has called you. What are the riches of his glorious inheritance in the saints? Wait, now we're talking about another inheritance. But Paul is saying, I want the church to have their eyes open to something. I want you to understand, Paul, his prayer is that you open your eyes, that you open the eyes of your heart, I wrote this and I can't read it. Paul says his prayer is that the eyes of your heart will be opened. And that you'll see your struggle isn't just a physical battle against flesh and blood, but that there is a spiritual world. There's a spirit at work in us. And that this is an internal war. It's not easily fought because it's a war of spirits. A realm we cannot see or touch. And that it's beyond our control. Outside of our power. C.S. Lewis said, no man knows how bad he is till he's tried very hard to be good. hearing what I've had to say this morning may be disheartening. Because now we see that this person that we've always been is our nature. It's who we were born into. In fact, we were inherent to have this sin nature. And I hope it is disheartening to you this morning, because there's hope. I'm reminded of an older song that's called Holding Out for a Hero. Have y'all ever seen that movie, Footloose? Anybody seen Footloose? Yeah? Remember that song? I'm holding out for a hero. The words of the song say, I'm holding out for a hero that's got to be strong, that's got to be tough, that's got to be larger than life. Why? Do you ever wonder why the Marvel movie series is so popular? You ever wonder why people love Superman and Batman and all of these superheroes? Because we all need to be saved. We all know that we're in a pitiful place in the world, and without something outside of our control, without something that's supernatural, without something that's bigger than life, we know that we're doomed. That's why we watch these shows. That's why we watch those things. That's why we live in those different movies have made millions and billions of dollars. People are holding out for a hero and recognize that they need salvation. Saving grace. Out of all of the passages that we read today, there's one moment that I want you to see that Paul displays. I want you to know this. Salvation doesn't make you sinless. It makes you spiritually alive. Did you get that? Salvation does not make you sinless. It makes you spiritually alive. Before Christ, sin was your only master. And now it's like a bad landlord trying to collect rent in a house that he doesn't own anymore. So let's turn to Ephesians 2:4. Let's get some hope in this today. Ephesians 2:4. Well, let's finish. Let's just go 2:1 all the way through 4. It says, and you were dead in your trespasses and sin in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air. Look at this. The next line says what? The Spirit. Where's the Spirit at? Can you show me the Spirit today? No, you can't see it. Larger than you, bigger than you, and it exists in a realm that we don't see, that we have no power over. And Paul says there's this Spirit that exists and is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and were by nature, it's your nature, were by nature children of wrath, like the rest of mankind. Oh, look at that next little 2 words. But God. But God. But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. Man, that's good news, isn't it? That is good news. Let's look at Romans 7, 2-5. Oh, I guess I messed that up when I put that up there, but Romans 7, I don't think it was supposed to be 25 anyway. Okay, yes, it is. Romans 7:25. Thanks be to God. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, so then I myself serve the law of God with my mind, but with my flesh I serve the law of sin. 2 and 4. Okay. Now let's turn to Romans 5:15 through 17. Romans 5:15 through 17. See what good news Paul has for us here. Romans 5:15 through 17. But the free gift is not like the trespass, for if many died through one man's trespass, remember, one man sinned and the whole world came under that sin, and now it's our nature to be sinful. So if many died through one man's trespass, much more have the grace of God and the free gift by the grace of that one man, Jesus Christ, abound for many. And the free gift is not like the result of that one man's sin, for the judgment following one trespass brought condemnation, but the free gift following many trespasses brought justification. For if, because of one man's trespasses, death reigned through that one man, much more will those who receive the abundance of grace and the free gift of righteousness reign in life through the one man, Jesus Christ. Therefore, as one trespass led to condemnation for all men, so one act of righteousness leads to justification and life for all men. Isn't that awesome? So that's the good news, right? It was your nature to be sinful. It's your nature to continue and as we talked, being saved doesn't mean that you're automatically. See, I think that a lot of times when we start talking about the transformation, when we start talking about the new creation, right, that people, they don't have a depth of theology. And so when they don't have that depth of theology, we start talking about, well, you're going to walk down the aisle and you're going to become a new creation in Christ. What we don't tell them is that new creation is meaning that death will leave you and life will be breathed into you. But what we oftentimes tend to try, I don't think that we do it I don't think that we do it on purpose. But oftentimes what gets conveyed to somebody is you're going to walk down the aisle, you're going to be convicted by the Holy Spirit, this thing in this world that we can't see, that we can't touch, right? We've called out for a hero. God didn't send Superman. He didn't send Batman. He didn't send the Avengers. He sent something much better, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and he came to shed his blood on the cross so that we could be saved. So we called out for a hero. He sent Jesus, the greatest of the great. And we walked down the aisle, and that new creation became his breath in our lungs, that now we're breathing new life. But not that we're perfect. Because, see, sanctification, justification, righteousness, this is a walk that we're on, not justification. Sanctification. This is a walk that we're on. And it's not one that we'll ever finish until we reach the throne. And so I want you to know today, if you're struggling, it's okay. That's who this message is for. I want you to understand there's a difference between being dead in sin. Pay attention to this and think about it. There's a difference between being dead in sin and being dead to sin. Right? Because now, I don't die because of my sin. I have eternal life that can't be taken away by my mistakes or my brokenness. So, I want you to understand this. If you were standing in a pool of water before you knew how to swim and you fell in, you're now faced with a decision, aren't you? Sink or swim? We're told that a lot, right? How many times, I don't know, did anybody's dad throw them in the water and hope they swam? Yeah? Yeah? Oh, you did tell us that story. That was before church. I even believe you. That's the thing, right? They throw you in the water because it's instinctual for you to swim. It is. Willow, we threw her in the lake. She knows how to swim. She didn't even know she knew how to swim, but she does.
We didn't know she knew.
Right. It's in her nature. It's in her nature. Now, there's a difference between drowning and swimming, right? If I'm thrown in the lake and I drown because I don't know how to swim, that's one thing. But if I'm thrown in the lake and I drown, but I know how to swim, that's quite something else. Before I knew how to swim, when I fell in water, I may have panicked, I may have sank, I may have died. But knowing how to swim, if I fall in now, my struggle has purpose. Does it mean that if I get pushed in the lake, if I fall in the lake, if somebody tries to duck me or whatever, does it mean that I'm not going to struggle to get my head above water? It's not what it means at all. I've been swimming all of my life, and I still come to times where I wish I would have done that. But today my struggle has purpose, right? Before I knew how to swim, I may have been just thrashing about, doing anything I could, just trying to survive. Today, I'm getting my head above water with purpose because my body, my mind, my heart know what to do to save my life. Not only purpose do I have in my struggles, but today I have new breath. I have new life. I can keep my head above water. Paul is demonstrating that in this message today. That, yes, he understands, and we need to understand, you're not perfect. Probably never going to be perfect. Why are you not perfect? Because by nature you're a sinner. By nature, you want to stick the fork in the light socket. By nature, you want to drink a gallon of bleach. By nature, you want to follow the world and do everything that's bad for you. Through salvation, we struggle against those spirits that are at work outside of us. We've called out, I need a hero. And God sent Jesus, and you were saved. He threw you a lifeline, a jacket, a way for you to be able to keep your head above water. And I want you to know today, if you're struggling, it's okay. It's fine. Because in that struggle, it means that you have purpose. And so I want you to understand that today. If you're going through a hard time in life, if there's stuff going on, if you still feel like, man, I can't believe I'm 50 years old and still making the same stupid decisions that I've ever made. Some of you a lot older than that, so I'm just saying that's me. I'm 50 and still making them. Do you understand? If you're struggling, that's good. If you're drowning, it's not so good. If you're drowning today, call out for a hero and be saved. Let's bow our heads and close our eyes.